Welcome to another episode of The Aligned Life, The Goddess Life, where we dive into living life fully aligned, mind, body, and spirit, at peace and unbothered. Today, we are sitting down for another episode of our Tarot Talk, where Layne and I sit down and we talk about the energies that are currently surrounding us, how we can utilize tarot to our highest extent. And we're approaching Samhain. We're seeing this Aries full moon that is happening. I think it actually becomes full tomorrow, but we're already really feeling those energies and this push towards expression and production and moving in these different directions. So, thank you for joining me today, Layne. I am so excited to dive into this fiery place of forward momentum.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that we're back and it feels appropriate to be able to come back together and talk about the energies and just feeling like let's that Mars energy, let's do this. We just came from that Libra new moon, which was also then an eclipse. And so it was really like trudging through. It kind of felt like walking through muck and your boots are just like collecting like another pound of mud as you're walking, and they're getting heavier and heavier. And now we've like reached dry shore where we can stomp off the mud, we can scrape off the mud and it feels like there's a weight that's been lifted. But not only that, it's almost like the horizon it like cleared, the view cleared, and now there's a spark of, well, curiosity, what's over there, excitement. We've made it through that valley of muck, and now we're coming up on the ridge to be able to get a viewpoint with full moon. It's all about illuminating. And other astrologers I've listened to, they're talking about how it's illuminating the themes that were trudged up from that new moon in Libra. That's the Libra Aries axis. Um, so it's great that we're getting together now to talk about it.
Yes. I feel like also, especially from like a shadow work aspect, there were a lot of people that needed to that Libra moon made a lot of people look at themselves and look at where they had lost that forward motion and that momentum. And as they were kind of going through that sludge, like you were saying, and now that we're coming to that dry land, they've like had time to understand what it means to like always have your muck boots with you and
Mhm.
to pack all of these ideas kind of like boosting themselves up to survive those trudgy, sludgy energies as they come throughout these other cycles.
Yeah. I just have this image of like holding our pack above our head, right? And like we're getting deeper and deeper and like at the peak of the new moon, like it's like waist high and we're like, "Oh my God," and we're trying to carry things with us and then getting to the other side and like realizing, okay, I didn't really actually need to bring this. This was weighing me down, like going through the pack, and throwing things over our shoulders like, okay, this I didn't need. I really didn't need this, but this thing was important. And so it feels like a very in your face energy. And it's like you had to, with the new moon, like you said, it brought it up. So like the mirror was right there, but it was very internal, the mirror. Where am I? What am I doing? Where are my values and my boundaries around my values? What things that I value in relationships, love, money, material things, right? That Libra balancing act. And now that we've come through and we're like, well, that's not for me. It's that Aries and Mars is in Cancer. So it's still very much a how you feel about things, but it's what action are you taking now on how you feel about things. Like it's very much, it's time to just stand up and start walking. Just start walking. You get rid of what doesn't serve you and just start doing things. And I, as an Aries sun, I love that. I love
Yes.
this energy. It's kind of brash, it's kind of blunt. Yes, Mars being in Cancer, like there's still an element of feelings, but it's kind of um feelings are secondary to just taking action steps and then seeing how you feel about it.
Oh yeah. And I wouldn't even necessarily yes, definitely secondary, but I think a lot of what this comes off as too is that you have to understand your need of priority, not necessarily taking the time to prioritize, but like going head first into what it is you need, what it is you want, where that goal is for you, and then worrying about what comes next afterwards. It's about that lesson of understanding where that priority lies. Does that make sense?
It does, and that hits really, like, on the nose for me right now. Like, I started offering myself to volunteer at the schools, helping the music director, the choir director, which I love. I love stepping back into that world and remembering my expertise in it. But then when this week kinda rolled around, I was like, "My priorities are getting a little shifted here." Like, that's great and fun, but it's volunteer. I'm not getting paid, and even though I know I'm super appreciated and they love having me there, um, I needed to just say, "Okay, this week I need to take a step back. I'm just a volunteer," right? And those priorities of what like other projects, like I started that painting project in the summer to paint my own tarot cards. Well, I'm nearing 2 months because of life that I haven't gotten back to it. So it is very much that full moon coming back around priorities. Like, what am I doing for me? And where do these things lie? It's not that any one thing is bad necessarily. It's just a give and take.
Yes, yes. And look, for me, I actually am about to take on a new volunteer opportunity, but it's a volunteer opportunity that is aligned and necessary for where my path is going. And it's not driven by this of course I want to do it, but it's not driven by this thing that I want to fill my time with because it is a feel good thing. It
Right.
is something I want to fill my time with because it's necessary for my purpose and my path, and it's where my drive should be.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, I totally feel like it's part of alignment to have that volunteering at the school like on the side since my kids are in school and being involved. That's very much, for me. But I can't allow I just have to weigh you have to weigh things. Very Libra. You have to weigh
Yes.
things. Like, how much weight does this hold in my life, and how is it moving the meter forward in what I'm doing? Um, and so even as you're coming into your journey with volunteering, how much time and weight does it have to take up, in the balance of all the other things that you're doing. And right now it's taking action on these things and then seeing how it feels, how it weighs out. Um there's also so Jupiter is retrograding right now still. And so Jupiter has been kind of making things a little bit over dramatic. And with that Mars in Cancer, there is a certain element of frustration in expressing our emotions effectively, in a way that others can hear. You know, it's not always what you say, it's how you say it
Yes.
right now.
Yes. There has been a large and if you all want to come for me, you are welcome to come for me. We can talk about this at like the deepest level. But in all of this conversation, I'm drawn to what I have realized recently. We have lost a lot of ourselves into this idea of emotional connection, which is something we desperately needed. We lived for so long without emotional connection and without that emotional force behind us that once we were able to get back into it and realize how important it was, we kind of like just fell into quicksand. And
Yeah.
it consumed us and it consumed everything that we were doing. And I will put myself in there too, but it was like I think I know I there were very few people. I could count on one hand how many people did not fall into that quicksand that I know.
Yeah.
Um
It's like once
and
we got the terms, once we found terms to describe social emotional experience, some people though then took it and weaponized it.
yes.
And we've talked about like covert narcissism where, they're telling you, I feel unsafe around you, and to the point where now you're walking on eggshells around them when you don't agree with them, and essentially they've become unsafe for you, right?
Yes.
So there is that element, and that's why I love the energy of this Aries moon, because it's a little, like I said, it's blunt, it's brash, it's just blah. You just, it just comes out. It's like, this is how I feel, and there's certain element of the take it or leave it, like I said
Oh,
what I
yes.
said, which can be necessary to break through certain walls that, like you said, that quicksand that's been built.
Yes. Yes, and I see a lot of people getting stuck in that quicksand with themselves.
Mm,
They're doing
mm,
so much of this is what I need, but they're not this moon is about to take them. You're either going to be fully consumed by that quicksand, like it is going to cover your head, or you better figure out how to grab a branch. Because
mhm.
there's one right there and pull yourself out from that because there's so many people that and as a person who works with mental health, one of the most common things that I'm seeing right now in all of these energies is I'm angry and I have no direction and I don't understand why. Well,
Yes.
it's because you are consumed by that quicksand. You have allowed all of these things to consume you. And I'm not talking about the allowance of emotions. I'm talking about the allowance of scenarios, the allowance of what is happening
Mm,
around you. And you're not making this
yes.
forward motion to where you want to be and where you need to go.
Right. This draws me to my dad. He's a Cancer son, and very much that Mars and Cancer energy. And I remember as a child, you know, I have the Pisces moon, so when I get angry, I cry. Well, like most emotions expressed as crying. When I'm happy, I cry. But I remember being mad about something, but I'm crying, and he's like, get pissed. He's like, how bad do you want XYZ? And he was like, get pissed and then do something about it. He's like, if you really want something, take that anger that you're feeling. And sometimes a lot of it is we're angry at ourselves because, like you said, we're trying to be kind, we're trying to be nice, we're trying to navigate other people's feelings and putting them before our own, thinking that that's doing right, when sometimes you just kind of have to get pissed and take the initiative, and just for a moment, it's not about the other people. They have to deal with their own feelings about whatever, and just taking the action, stepping
Yes.
forward.
Yes, absolutely. Richard says cardinal signs will always have that type of advice. Do something. They want to always initiate.
Hmm.
And yes, absolutely. Um, and I'm also drawn in this, like I as far as like your dad talking about like getting pissed and having those reactions, I'm drawn to all of these people that are allowing and trying to hold space for others and allowing people to have their own existence. They're not upholding their own boundaries. And we're losing just as quickly as we learned what boundaries are, we're losing how to hold them for ourselves.
Ooh.
Um, I
Mhm.
was talking to someone about this the other day. We were talking about how they needed to stop sharing certain things with their parents because their parents would hold things over them like, well, why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you doing things like that? And like kind of
Oh,
almost having like a little bit of shame coming out towards them.
mhm.
And they're like, how do I move past that? And I'm like, stop talking to them. You don't have to cut off contact. Stop talking to them about what you're doing in those areas.
Right, yes.
You
When it
don't
comes
have
to
to end the
relationships,
relationship. No,
yeah.
keep going because I love how we just said the same thing.
Same thing, but, like, when it comes to, like, my marriage, some like, you want someone safe to just vent to, but, when it's, like, my mom, she loves me. So she interprets and holds things because she wants so much for me, right? And then I'm like, "Oh, shit," like, we worked through it, but she still has a feeling about it, and so there's certain times where I'm like, if I just wait, just pause on that, until maybe we've resolved it ourselves, whatever it is. Usually it's pretty small, but yeah, it's an interesting dynamic on those boundaries.
Yes,
Knowing
yes.
who is safe to vent to and who is going to, well, take it and make it grow in a direction you did not want it to grow in.
Exactly. Heather says this moon is pushing her towards opening up emotions that she needs to deal with and being okay to come into her light.
Oh,
And although
yes.
that's emotional, like that is still so much of that needing to do.
Well, emotion in motion. So, from what I've gathered through study and downloads, we this human body was created, but how do we get this human vessel to do things like eat, procreate, keep ourselves safe, right? There's this mechanism, emotions, right? And it puts the body in motion. And so taking those feelings and then translating them through the body in a physical way is really the ultimate goal, moving them through. I mean, we talk a lot about feeling them through, but the end goal is then the what do you do with it? What are you going to do with it?
Yes.
Like, you had this feeling, you felt it through, you did the reflection, but now you have to do something with it, or it's just going to keep stewing.
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. I like that in motion. I don't think I've ever really like taken the time to look at emotion as in motion. But that's exactly what it is, and it needs to, like, come to a head. It's exactly why your dad explained to you, get pissed because you have to move that through, experience that, and find where that end result of that is. And sometimes, that it looks different for all of the different emotions, and it looks different, especially if you're trying to heal yourself, like Heather's saying, being okay to come into her light. Sometimes this
Mhm.
looks like forgiving others, not forgetting, not allowing, but forgiving that a person could be so flawed to do certain things, forgiving ourselves for that anger
Mhm.
that we're holding against ourselves for having scenarios happen to us. And sometimes it's about just a it's about understanding what vulnerability truly means as a strength instead of a weakness.
Right, right. I mean, in general, I look at sadness. When we're sad, it's usually that we had this expectation of how things were going to be, how so other people would react, how other people would behave. We had an expectation of how things would be, and then it didn't happen. So there's this disappointment, and so checking our expectations realistic, and can you course navigate through that? And anger, oftentimes to me, is that a boundary was crossed. There was a boundary, and
Yes.
you didn't even know it was there, maybe. And it's a boundary that you crossed yourself with someone else, or that someone else crossed, and you didn't even know that you needed a boundary there. But anger usually is an indicator that there needed to be something upheld there. And so like a good like righteous anger is pushing forward and saying, no, this is my boundary, or pushing through even a self-limiting boundary that was too close, too close. You didn't give yourself enough room, and you got to push out through it and make that stand. Either way, right?
Yes. This reminds me of the cards that we mentioned as we were getting ready for this episode and this chat.
Hmm.
Because this fits with those so well. We talked about the Hanged Man, and we brought up the moon. And as I'm going through my deck, there's actually one where the representation fits this really well. But let's go ahead and dive into those and how those relate to this.
Yeah, so the hangman is the spirit of water. So it is taking that water and everything that we have understood about our emotional waters, but then allowing ourselves to suspend ourselves in it and gain that new perspective on it. Because as soon as you are ready, the hangman is hanging there of his own volition. So suspending yourself in it, and then when you're ready and you're done hanging upside down in it, you have full autonomy and sovereignty to remove yourself from that situation. And then it does move into then death, which is, you know, it's putting something to rest while also making room for some rebirth, new growth from that space.
Yes. Yes. Yes, absolutely. And looking at this deck, I actually have not seen the hangman in this deck yet as I pull it out. Um
But you have to tell everyone what deck you have
oh,
there.
I am. um so I was gifted the Labyrinth tarot deck, like the movie Labyrinth, and the hanged man is the scene where Ludo is hanging from the tree when
Oh,
he comes
perfect.
up to save him, and I love this. Um, and I love that idea of like that innocence and that fear there, but you're strong, like Ludo is strong, and Ludo is friends with the stones. He is friends with the rocks, and he could do all of these different things to save himself, but he was in this very and I'm drawn to that quicksand again. He was kind of in like that quicksand with those knights that were around him, stringing him up and holding him accountable for something that he really seemed to not do. I don't think we ever really get what that was. But this his innocence is really perfect here. Courtney also says that was a really good insight on anger, going back to that idea about anger. She feels like she's never really known what to do with her anger, and seeing it as an indicator of a boundary makes so much more sense and kind of helps point in a better direction. Absolutely, if something makes you upset in that particular way with anger, I have found this in myself. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a Scorpio. When I'm angry, I'm very angry. It is like fire energy kind of an angry. And I have learned that if something makes me feel this aggression and this idea of, to be quite honest here, if I start feeling violent, I need to put a boundary there. I need to say,
Hmm.
okay, nope, we're not doing this because I do not invite this into my space anymore.
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
So
And
yeah, if
sometimes
you're
for me, yeah, I'm simply aggravated and angry with circumstance. I'm just like, this sucks. I'm pissed and I'm feeling constrained or, limited. And so that anger helps me have that burst to just bust through, again, these self perceived limitations and be like, no, no, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I need to just get this shit done.
oh
And
yeah.
just as a motivator, like, nope, I'm plowing through. I'm done. I'm done.
Oh yes. And it's very much in that hanged man energy, and that idea of like, if you're not putting up your own boundaries, you are not releasing yourself from this binding of yourself. And I also keep getting drawn to, for those of you who are connected with Norse mythology or any of these ideas, I'm also drawn to the knowledge that Odin receives while he's hanging on the tree. That's not his only purpose there, but there is lots of knowledge that he gains from this and lots of insight that he gains from this. And it shows him a whole different perspective when you read those lores. I constantly see Odin in the Hanged Man, probably in different ways that other people don't see. But it's taking that knowledge and knowing what it is you need to do with it. A lot of people always talk about the hangman being letting go, but you have to know what you're letting go of and making sure
Mhm.
you're not letting go of parts of yourself in that.
Yes. Yep.
Like Ludo
Well
hanging
said. I
from the
know. That's and Ludo's so cute. I love how the pop culture can really give us something like tangible because he is so sweet and he wants just the best, but he forgets his own strength in that. And
Yes.
like you said, like he said, the rocks are his friends, he forgets he's got allies. Like that's another, I think, element to this full moon is like we do have allies. We do have people that we can lean into. And if you don't feel that way, just having that awareness to observe how others are interacting with you around you. Finding the real ones. And sometimes a test of anger is a really great way to learn who's with you and who's not.
Oh, absolutely. And then I'm so excited to tell you about this third card that is not the card. So I because it fits so perfectly with this. So the other card that I was drawn to in just representation in this as I was going through this deck was the Justice card because it's the helping hands.
Oh, cute.
So when for those of you who haven't seen the labyrinth, there's a point where she falls into this hole and she's in a tunnel with all of these hands coming out of the walls. And I really, really love this because she is, trying to figure out how she gets out of all of these hands that are holding her. And they say, we're helping hands. They're like, which way do you want to go? She's like, well, I guess I want to go down because I'm already pointing down. And they're like, well, she said down. She's like, did I make the wrong decision? Well, it's too late now. And she goes down.
Yep.
And I love that because it's definitely the allowance of choice, but needing to know which way you're going before you make that choice is a
Well, and
big
justice
part of
is,
that.
yeah, justice is a very Libra card, and we're at the very tail end now of Libra season. So it does really speak to that weighing out things. Like Libra, the misconception is that Libras are balanced. In fact, they're the least balanced because they're constantly trying to find what balance means. And so they're always adding and taking away from the scales constantly. It's a constant movement to figure out what is in balance and what is not. And so there's always this experimentation. And that's why they are so keen with other people. They can be mischaracterized as just people pleasers, right? But they're very in tune with um, and how to be in harmony with other people, and then finding what's not in harmony constantly.
Oh yes, yes, absolutely. And I feel like that is also part of what we're learning here as we come into this moon, and visiting with these energies of taking oh, what's the word I'm looking for? I totally lost my whole English language here. But taking that inventory of what we have, what helps us, what does not help us. How do we release ourselves from this hanging position? Or how are we able to see this branch that is kind of over our quicksand that we can pull ourselves out with?
Mm-hmm.
Is very reminiscent in that. I'm Are you ready to step into your personal power and embrace deep soul healing? It's time to unlock the magic within you through Inner Alchemy, a transformative online workshop running from December 6th to 9th that will help you discover your personal pillars, connect with your ancestral soul, and tap into the energy that shapes your life. At Inner Alchemy, we combine ancient wisdom with modern therapeutic techniques to guide you on a journey of self discovery. Whether you're just beginning your spiritual path or are ready to dive deeper into your shadow work, this workshop offers the tools and support you need to become the master of your own healing. And for your convenience, all classes will be recorded, so if you can't attend live, you'll have full access to everything at your own pace. We've made it even easier to join us. Inner Alchemy now accepts Afterpay, allowing you to start your journey today and pay over time stress free. Through energy work, shadow integration, and archetype exploration, you'll gain powerful insights that will empower you to overcome personal obstacles and start living authentically. And the best part? You'll be joining a community of like minded souls, all from the comfort of your own space. Don't wait to begin your transformation. Sign up for Inner Alchemy today, running from December 6th to 9th. And with Afterpay, you can start your healing journey now while spreading the cost over time. Visit www.goddesslifehealing.com to learn more and claim your spot. Inner Alchemy, where your healing journey begins. I'm curious though, what do your cards what look like for
So
those?
I grabbed my Thoth deck, um, and I'm just gonna pull a couple cards here. Now that we've like really gotten into the energy of it, Hangman is just what came to mind. So I feel like that's just an overarching theme. I love that you pulled up justice or adjustment in this deck. Um, okay,
I
so the
love it
first,
as adjustment.
yes, he calls it adjustment in this deck. So I did get the Three of Wands, and he calls this card Virtue, and it's very much Sun and Aries. They're very tied to the astrology. So with wands is fire, wands is action, and three is is a master creator number. So we are disposed to be creative beings right now. Like that is really what we're being called to right now. Is what are you going to create with what you have? Um, and I have also, so I have Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth deck by Lon Milo Duquette. Amazing author. He has the most tongue-in-cheek way of writing. It's hilarious, which brings us levity when you're reading about these things. Um, Gives it, it's a little lighter. And I love that he also has an edge of cynicalism to him. So it's very fun to read. And so I'm using his book. Um, let's see. So the sun is in Aries, exalted, couldn't be happier. Um, let's see. This is all very deep Kabbalah stuff in here. But he calls it Crowley calls it the Lord of established strength. Established strength. So what we've come through, the muck, and then having the strength. After all of that, like our legs are weak, the legs are shaking, but now we can knock off all that gunk and we feel light. Have you ever gone for a long hike and you have a pack on and you just kind of get used to it and then you're done hiking and you take your backpack off and it almost feels like you're going to float away?
Oh
That's kind
yeah,
of
you're
the
light as a
feeling right
feather.
now. Yeah, that's kind of the feeling that I'm getting right now is that we can move forward. We have all the tools that we choose to keep with us and take action on, but there's a lightness to it. Like we can take this forward.
Yes, absolutely. Um, Also, in this, I feel like this may also be helping this person's comment. Mariah said that she's honestly felt kind of like the hangman scenario for years with sadness and stagnant grief just kind of hanging over. But the past month has seemed to change it to a focused anger building up and pushing to stand up to fight to make things right again. And then she asked, does that make sense? That makes total
Mhm.
sense, especially in these energies and in the idea of talking about as motion, making things lighter for yourself. You're done with grief. You're done with being sad, and you finally hit your point of setting that boundary of, okay, I'm done.
Mhm.
I don't
Yep.
want to do this anymore.
Yeah. Like, I'm pissed. I'm done. And if the hanged man really resonates, just remembering that, like, you have choice. He's choosing to suspend himself. And I understand the last 3 years have been, I wonder what our astrology is, cuz it's been difficult, and I really feel like my life got flipped on its head and my perspective was flipped on its head, and we go through these dark nights of the soul. Now, it feels as though we've fallen into these voids, but really it's the series of choices that we made along the way that opened up our awareness to then end up in this place where there's no up and down, in order to then craft and create our next steps forward. And I know it's super crunchy, but it's an important part of this awakening process. You have to devolve, you have to contract in order to then create again.
Yeah.
Like I've said before, if you're always expanding, that becomes cancer, or you take on more than what you can actually handle too much too quickly, and then it crumbles. So it's important to go through these periods to really identify, like, what's for you and what's not for you. And then we're actively changing through these processes. So, like I said, there is no up or down because I'm changing. Therefore, the parameters of what I want and who I see myself as and my purpose, like, they're changing too. So what used to fit for me no longer does. And if I try to put myself back in those situations that once felt great, now feel ick, you're like,
Oh
who
yeah.
am I?
Oh, yeah, and if you're coming out of a place of, like, thick, heavy trauma, one thing that I have noticed is that, once we get our first breath of fresh air, that's when we start to get angry because we start to understand,
Yes.
like, "Oh, well, I just put myself through all of this. I'm now taking, inventory of what I did that caused more problems to happen, and I'm angry at the people that were outside of these scenarios that brought this into me. I'm angry at the people who left me when I was at a vulnerable
Mhm.
state, even if I was the one that was hurting them at that time. And it is so important for you to look at those boots. I'm drawn so heavily to that idea of, like, going through the muck. And then was it the 3 of Wands that you pulled?
It is, yeah.
And the 3 of Wands being like, okay, you're out of that muck now, but you have all this dried mud on the bottom of your muck boots, and you have to, like, sit there with a stick, real heavy-handed, and
Yeah.
beat the crap out of these boots to get this dried mud off of it
Uh-huh.
because you allowed it to stick to you, and that doesn't mean that you're gonna carry it forward, and if you beat it off your boots, you're not going to have that weight on you anymore, and you can look back and say, "Okay, well, that was a lot." And
Yeah.
you can make forward motion, uphold your boundaries, and make these walls of, I'm gonna use the the analogy that Ashley uses so often, you are building the walls of your house. Think of it like you're building a new home. You just totally destroyed the other one. You blew it up. And you were like, no more, no thank you. And now you can start from square one, and you can look at things that will make you angry because you haven't moved past that anger yet. And you can say, okay, what am I going to do to not have this anger come into my life anymore? And it's not something of repressing it. It's not something of allowing to be hurt. It's something of, okay, how do I structure the walls of my home to hold the house that I want, the life that I want?
Mhm. Yep, yep, and then recognizing any misplaced error, like, you thought you saw the way. You thought you were convinced that that was the direction I'm heading in, and that's for me, and you ended up through the murky muck. Okay?
Yes.
Remember, from that previous perspective, you made the best decision you could with what you had at the time, where how you were feeling, where you were at, the knowledge that you had, right? And so there's no use staying pissed at yourself for having gone through that, you know? It's
Oh,
done.
yeah.
It's done. That's where this Aries, like, fuck it, I'm angry energy comes in, where it's like, no, I did it. I'm done. Like, fuck that. But I learned something. I learned something. And it's always of value when you can find the evolution, the lesson in it. And I know that's cliche. I know that's so cliche, but it helps to get that center alignment in purpose and defining, so where am I going now? With what I know now, now where am I going? And knowing, now you've got a little heads up, like, okay, well, I'm not going to go into that shit again. But
Right.
you're going to
I'm
find
not
something
going to take
new.
that door.
Yeah, I'm not opening that door. I'm going to do this one, but just recognizing you'll find some new shit. Like, you will.
Mhm. There will always be new stuff that you will need to evaluate. And the whole idea of healing, spiritual healing, is about having the tools in your arsenal from your previous experiences to know how to face them as they come. That way, you don't have to, you're not going to restart every single time if you do the work and take this
Mhm.
inventory of things. Heather also said she totally agrees. She's even said that before, that I'm done. I've moved through those feelings and I understand what I was being taught. It's freedom for the body, the mind, and the heart. And it totally is. It's absolutely, it's this idea of liberating the self. When we talk about moving into the self, doing best for the self, this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about having our emotions take the front seat. We're not talking about standing apart from the crowd. Those are all fine and dandy, wonderful things that we'll talk about on a different day.
Yeah.
This is that nitty gritty in your soul. It hurts to do kind of work.
Yes. Yes. But when you walk through it and you come out the other end, you're just like, whew. So the next card I pulled is the Knight of Cups. And in the Thoth deck, he describes it as the fire of water,
Oh, I
which
love that.
is
As
so
a
what this
Scorpio,
is. I
I
know.
love
And so
that.
it shows him on a horse, like mid leap. He's got wings coming out of his back. He's holding his chalice, his Cancer water cup chalice up above his head. It's like beaming light. Like he's going towards it. So this is the taking that emotion, the water, but giving it that fire of movement into, okay, well, what am I doing with it? I'm done being sad. I'm done being upset. I'm done feeling disappointed. What am I doing with it? And then, so it's this full leap.
I love that. I love that imagery of the chalice that you described there. I don't think I've actually seen that card from that deck before. Because that just sounds fantastic. But yes, it is, I love how so much of this is about the motion and the motion of emotion. Um because we often get lost in those emotions, and having that fire to pull it up and actually make it do something. I'm drawn to the ideas of, for those of you who have like watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, I'm drawn to not only the water benders and how they move that water, but I'm drawn to what happened with the blood benders and how much deeper that goes when we utilize that. Andrew also said, he gave us an analogy. get pissed at the mess and clutter and do something about it. And then he also made a funny of fire water, so we're drinking now.
Yeah. So we're drinking now.
I
Yeah.
know.
Kind of throwing inhibitions aside, I think is okay. I mean, I have had conversations. I'm not much of a drinker at all anymore, but occasionally, sometimes you just kind of need a good drunk. Like you even need the hangover. Like you need the whole experience. Like a good drunk, get a little messy, say the things that have just been like, what is it? A drunk mouth speaks a sober mind, right? Just bleh, say the things and then have the even the whole hangover. Like some like it's kind of that feeling, like throwing inhibition aside.
Oh yeah. And sometimes we have to remember the lessons that we had. And I'm drawn into that idea of the parent who misses those younger adventures, and you're not thinking about the more negative things that were going on at the time or why you may have been drawn to that at the time. And then
Hmm.
you go do it, and you wake up the next morning and you're like, oh yeah, that's why I don't do that.
Yeah, just need a little reminder. Yeah. So I popped the picture of the Knight of Cups into our large group chat so that anyone who's listening that's a part of our group on Facebook, they can join the chat and they can see those pictures. So let's do one more card. Just okay, so we've had where we're coming from, current experience. Let's find out where we're going. Let me do a little
Also,
shuffle
just
here.
while you do that, I pulled up the imagery. This is a beautiful card.
Yeah, so the artwork is Lady Frida. Shoot, hold on. Okay, let me set the deck aside and look again at the artwork. Lady Frida Harris, that's what it is.
Okay.
Amazing. Yep.
I love how the feathers on the wings look like stairs.
Ooh, love that. And then peep, there's like a bit of a peacock in the corner, very faintly drawn in there to like that wave, if you will.
Yes.
And so, the peacock, like that's just like, okay, I'm gonna stand my ground and show off me and make obnoxious noises. Because if you've ever heard a peacock in real life, they are obnoxious. And they'll chase you too. So like talk about Aries moon energy right there.
Yes.
Okay. Just one card, please. Well, okay. I did get three, so whatever. Not what I asked for, but what we're getting. Okay, so what we're gonna go through. We have a bit of a story here. Now, I see initially we have three of swords. He calls this sorrow. So again, and we've visited this quite a bit, that grief that we'll go through, the grief of putting to bed like who we were, what we went through, um, and just feeling that through. And as we move through the grief of what has been, and I think a lot of that's just acknowledging it for what it is, getting really radical with our part in what has been, right? Moving through that though, we move into the six of wands, and we've had six of wands come up before. A lot of movement. You're now in the journey. Like as you move through the grief of what has been, you've been radical with it. You've taken that initiative, and now the six, everything's in motion. Everything's in motion. The card is called victory, and from that place, we end up with at this Prince of Swords. So now we've collected our thoughts. So now our thoughts, even like that self talk, is now aligning with how we felt about things. And swords in action is voice, it's vocalizing, it's saying the things. So it's like the first step is like just physically moving the body, like Andrew said, get pissed and clean the house, get pissed that the house is dirty, just start cleaning it. But once that comes together, now the thoughts have cleared up and they've coalesced. It's a bit more streamlined. and you know where exactly to direct your energy.
Yes. I keep getting drawn to all of these pieces coming together. Uh, the imagery that I'm seeing in relation to like those of you who are, for those of you who don't know me yet, shadow work is kind of like my thing. So I'm always relating things to that in my brain. Just as a heads up there. But I keep seeing like that person who hits that next level and they're looking back and they're like, okay, I can do this. I can do this because I've already experienced that. I have the tools. I'm knocking the mud off of my muck boots. I am moving my emotion forward and making my way through it in those experiences. And now I have taken this space to learn from it. And instead of reflecting, it's more of a okay, I have that experience, I have that education, that knowledge. Now I can do better, be better, and make that forward step. Um,
Ooh,
it's
it's
very
almost like,
reminiscent.
yeah, it's almost like getting your certificate in something. Like you trudged through the studies and the boring bits and the learning, and now you were handed a certificate. Yay,
Yes.
yay. But now what? Oh, now you got to
Yep.
go apply for jobs.
Now you got to figure
Take
it
the
out.
certificate and do something with it. It doesn't do you any good just as a piece of paper in your hand. Like, woohoo, woohoo, we're happy. But what are you going to do with it?
Yep. And and that is for those of you who may take that as a negative, that's not a negative. That's like clear horizons in front of you. Um
Yeah.
and that's what I feel like this Aries moon is about, is instead of looking at it with fear, taking your certificate and turning around and going apply, apply, apply. Do,
Yeah.
do.
Mhm.
TK commented and said, "I'm going to need your cards to stop making so much sense." Um Plot twist, TK, we do this professionally, so they won't. They'll all make sense. Um,
Every time. No, it's great. And it is. It's open horizons and it's and then vocalize like so then that's putting yourself out there. Perfect with that Prince of Swords. Like you've coalesced your thoughts into a streamlined form where you're like, I am X, Y, and Z. I do X, Y, and Z. You have to put yourself out there a bit. And again, coming full circle, that vulnerability. Hanged Man puts himself in a vulnerable position on purpose.
mhm. Yep. And
Yeah.
holds himself there without using
Yep.
his tools, you know, and I'm drawn to that hiker who has all of their stuff. A hiker almost always has a knife or a cutting tool of some sort
Mhm.
readily available on their person. It's usually not even in their pack. And what is keeping you, in all of the depictions of the hanged man, his arms are typically open. He's being hung by his leg and lower extremities. So why haven't you reached in your pocket and cut the ropes yet?
Yeah. Yeah. And then once you do, if you've ever gone on a hike with a kid or a dog, what's the first thing they find other than a rock? Usually a good walking stick.
Mm-hmm.
Wands, stick, motion, right? Using your walking stick.
Oh, I love this. I love how they all just kind of like came together to paint this beautiful picture.
I
Um,
know.
This is such a great time. I'm so excited for this. I want to, as we go into this, I have a question for you, friend. Thinking about this full moon tomorrow. Actually, pause before I say that. Heather said, I think it can be a hard process to go through in the journey, but once you understand that life is just that, this journey, she said a journey, but I'm going to put this there because this is that individuation and individuality and that self journey that makes us succeed in all of the other aspects of our lives. But once we understand that life is just that, a journey, things will open up and flow. And absolutely, I agree with you.
Hmm.
Full force. But I am interested to know if we're looking at these energies um for this Aries full moon. For those who want to do their own pulls for this moon, what would you suggest they ask their deck?
Well, considering everything we've talked about, I would ask, um, like, what is it I just moved through? Just to really get clear and identify, like, what is it that I just moved through? Right. And then what what are my, like, give yourself, maybe even two or three option cards, like I see a pyramid kind of. So like, what did I just move through? And then moving into like three options, giving yourself options, and then weighing, and then from that, like, what is the benefit from it? That's a little bit bigger spread, but I feel like right now we're just being really primed to look at all of the options available and not having blinders on. I feel like we've kind of had our head down and we've been working, doing the work, and now it's time to pick our head up and see options. And it's priming us perfectly with this veil being thin, and we have sewing coming up, and all these wonderful things, but like, where is our energy best suited? Because I feel, like, there are options, and they're all probable possibilities. Um, but what is it that's going to move you forward?
Yes, I love that. I think those are great questions to ask. Similarly, if you're looking at that exact idea, if you're looking at it from a little bit more of like a trauma point, you can also ask how to oh, I lost my English again. It's integrate, how to integrate this lesson into forward motion is a good question to ask for to pull a card for. In lieu of maybe like a choice. I would still ask for choices in that too, but sometimes we get a little bit lost in how we're going to make the decision in those choices when we've experienced trauma. So if you need to add that in, that's a good idea to add in too. Um, I'm so excited for this moon. I'm so excited for Samhain coming up. Um, we're coming up on our hour. If there's one big takeaway that you had for everybody in today's episode, what would it be?
Oh, well, I feel called. I don't know if this wraps it up, but I feel called to remind everybody, and reminder for self here too, that every now moment we're making choices. Every now moment. And those are crafting and creating and building upon one another. And so breaking it down into just this now moment, what do I choose to do? They can be really small things, and breaking them down into bite-sized pieces, just to move, and get that, utilize this Aries energy of being in motion, right? I like to tell myself Newtonian law of, if an object's at rest, it tends to stay at rest when I'm like sitting on the couch vegging. But an object in motion tends to stay in motion. And so sometimes that choice comes down to, well, I'm just going to stand up. I'm just going to stand up off the
Yep.
couch, and then that leads to the next thing. It's like, well, I'll just start kind of picking up some trash, right? Talking about cleaning the house, but, it builds. And then before you know it, in that process, you can turn around and look and say, oh, I actually got quite a bit done. Like, make that phone call. You've been, you don't really want to, but you have to just do it quick.
Yeah, rip the band-aid off. Just,
Yeah, that's Aries. Just do it. And then, oh, it wasn't so bad. Okay, what's the next thing I can do? Pepper in some small wins.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm also drawn to that idea of like another big topic over the last few years, but it has been coming back around is, people are asking, what does self-care and self-love really looks like? And what it looks like is making these forward motions and taking care of yourself while you're doing it. Self-love is not sitting in that stagnancy. And that was one of those big things that happened with the quicksand moment of
Yeah.
emotional healing and spiritual healing is we got sucked
Yes.
into I can take all of the wonderful baths that I want. And I'm not making fun of anybody who
Yeah.
takes all of the wonderful baths, but there's more to it. And
Love
this
a good bath, but if your mind is stewing because of like these little irritating things that you need to actually take action on, sitting in a bath isn't going to make you feel better about it.
no, you're just gonna be
Do that
angry in the
after.
bathtub.
do that as a reward after. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. This has been a fantastic return episode. Thank you so much for sitting down at the table with me. And I cannot wait to see what shows up next week as we get closer to Samhain and as these liminal spaces open up further to us. So, thank you so much, friend. And thank you, everybody, for your comments and your interaction. This is wonderful. This is what we want. Please come back next week and feed us more of your stories and more of your thoughts. And thank you always for listening to us.